When it comes to technology, Japan is a long way ahead of Australia. We're here to learn more about how they're treating diseases like cancer and to find out how we can bring that back to Australia. This is a chance to completely change the game. They're using directed beams of particles to zap the cancer out of existence. It's hugely exciting.
Imagine a cancer therapy that can target the tumour with minimal side effects. That's particle therapy.
We need particle therapy in Australia.
It's part of our future.
Particle therapy is a type of cancer treatment that the Japanese have been using for over 20 years. In Australia, we're just starting to take our first steps into this treatment modality. Particle therapy works by having a very well-defined tight beam of particles. This beam normally consists of the nucleus of hydrogen, called proton, or by having the nucleus of a carbon ion. As these charged particles enter the human body, they slow down, depositing little bits of energy. The energy of the ion beam can be tailored so that it stops right at the tumour volume where it deposits the majority of the energy. It damages the DNA significantly, causing the tumour to die. Because of this effect, where most of the energy deposition is to the tumour volume, the surrounding tissue is very minimally affected. This means that with particle therapy there's a lower chance of having side effects from the treatment. Because particle therapy uses charged particles, the charge on these particles means you can use magnets to steer them. And by doing that, you can actually paint the tumour layer using a scanning beam. This scanning beam of charged particles can then also, by varying the energy, be stepped in depth. By this, you can get a really precise dose of radiation to the tumour. Because the dose in particle therapy is so highly targeted, while sparing the surrounding healthy tissue, it then also means that you can start to escalate the dosage, which means you can deliver more dose in fewer treatments. In Japan, using carbon ions for certain tumour types, they can treat them in less than a week. So, for example, 4 fractions for certain cancers, which means the patient's in and out of the hospital and done in less than 4 days of treatment.
There are plans to have a particle therapy facility in Adelaide, and there are also other proposals to build particle therapy centres in other parts of Australia as well. With particle therapy centres that have been built overseas, there's often been cooperation from all levels of government. This will be especially important in Australia, as we will need to have a number of these facilities because our population is concentrated in cities separated by vast distances. With a unified national approach, Australia is in a position to join countries like Japan to be at the cutting edge of particle therapy.
Today we've come to HIMAC, the Heavy Ion Medical Accelerator in Chiba. This is where particle therapy in Japan originated. Patients who are treated here are primarily treated with carbon ions. Before the particles could be used to treat patients, they need to be accelerated up to a maximum of 75% the speed of light. This is done using an accelerator type called a synchrotron. This synchrotron, you take the particles, they're injected in, and then using magnets, they're bent around in a circular path, where on every rotation as they go around, they get given a little bit of extra energy. Once they're at the energy that's needed for the treatment, they're then extracted and directed down towards the treatment room. Here they've recently also developed a superconducting carbon ion gantry. This is using superconducting magnets in order to bend the really high energy carbon ion beam up and around so that it's able to be directed at any angle into the patient. Behind the treatment room and behind the scenes, there's hundreds of tons of rotating steel and magnets that actually physically rotate around the patient in order to be able to direct the beam in exactly the right position, minimising any dose to any organs at risk while maximising the dose to the tumour. One of the great things about HIMAC is that once the patients are treated during the day, in the evenings and on weekends, researchers are able to come in and use the facility for doing some of the research. This includes biology, materials research, space science, as well as fundamental physics experiments, as well as developing new and novel treatment types. Today we visited the IROC facility at the Kanagawa Cancer Centre. This facility has taken the technology that was developed at the HIMAC facility at the National Institute of Radiological Sciences and implemented it within a hospital setting for treatment of patients. Prior to treatment, the patient will have an immobilisation mould made of their body to ensure that they are in the same position every day for their treatment. On the day of treatment, they will walk into the room, they will go onto the couch, have the immobilisation fitted to ensure they're in the right position. They will then be imaged using X-ray imaging to make sure that the tumour is in the right location for treatment. Because of the highly accurate nature of carbon ions, you want to make sure you're hitting exactly the right spot. Once this has been done, the patient is using a special robotic arm with 6 degrees of freedom, is able to be then positioned where the beam is, and then treatment can commence. Depending on the type of tumour, this might take only from less than a minute to a few minutes. The combination of the robotics, the high precision imaging, and then the treatment delivery and all the advantages that come with carbon ions means you have this extremely high precision and high effectiveness of treatment. It's really cool to see how these years of research at a facility like HIMAC have been able to evolve and be developed into a hospital setting environment like at IROC. We visited the University of Tsukuba Hospital, which, unlike HIMAC and IROC, uses protons which are smaller and lighter than carbon ions. Protons are more commonly used for childhood cancer than carbon. It's a more established technique using protons, and as such there are more facilities around the world. One of the other differences of proton therapy over carbon ion therapy is that it's a smaller footprint of the equipment required, so it can actually fit into a smaller facility. For carbon ions at treatment energies, you need a much higher magnetic field, so you either need very, very large and heavy magnets, or you need something moved to another technology like superconducting magnets. Because the proton beam is lighter and lower energy, it's easier to bend using conventional magnets. Therefore, for many years now, facilities like Tsukuba have had these rotating gantries that have been able to treat the patient at multiple angles, unlike carbon ions where it's a more new technology. Inside the treatment room, the patient only sees the end of the nozzle coming into the room and projecting the room. The actual gantry and all the other equipment is behind the scenes and unseen by the patient. The amount of engineering and equipment that's required to make sure that this treatment is precisely delivered when you've got this rotating mass of magnets and power supplies and everything else that's required to bend the beam around and precisely deliver it into the patient is absolutely staggering. These facilities have a track record of long-running and long-operating lifespans. When you build one of these facilities, you can expect to be treating tumours well into the future. When it comes to treating cancer, these types of facilities are a real game changer.
Our current cancer therapies are good, but we need this extra tool in our arsenal. Particle therapy, it's part of our future.
I want this for my patients.
I want this for my patients.
I want this for my patients.
I want this for my patients. We need particle therapy in Australia.